Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you very much for attending. We're going to be talking about employee advocacy today. My name is Ryan Smith. I'm the President and Chief Strategy Officer at Raidious. For those of you who don't know, Raidious, we're a digital marketing agency in Indianapolis, Indiana. Our specialty is developing, growing, and maintaining audiences for brands in the digital space. So employee advocacy is something that we work on a regular basis and something that we're kind of diving into head first, which is what led us to this webinar. So today you're going to hear from both myself, Andrew Gowdy, Senior Strategist here at Raidious, and also Ann Lee, who is the General Manager and Mid-Market VP of Customer Success at Dynamic Signal. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Again, thank you everyone for attending. All right. So let's talk about a little bit about what you will learn today from this webinar. What we're going to be talking about specifically is the definition of what is employee advocacy and what we mean by that. We're going to be talking about why employee advocacy matters. We're going to be talking about companies that have had success with employee advocacy. We're going to talk about how Raidious has walked the walk with EA and what we have done to take full advantage of our great team here within our agency. We're also going to talk about best practices to get started with employee advocacy, and then finally we'll end on some Q&A and some key takeaways, and we'll let everybody go back to work. So now I'm going to pass it on to Ann, who is going to jump into some case studies.
Hi guys, thanks so much, Ryan. My name is Ann. I am the VP of Customer Success at Dynamic Signal. We've been working with employee advocacy for about 5 years now. We have a large number of clients, anywhere from your 100 or so employee base all the way to 400,000 with our largest customers. And it's something that we've found across the board that people are really already doing. In a way, it's employees who are really excited and passionate about their work, about their corporation, about what they do on a day-to-day basis, and are sharing that passion with the world. What's interesting today is that there's technology to do this. So before, people would say, we've got this great post that's coming out, email it to everybody, can you please tweet about this, can you please tell your friends and family we have an event that's coming up. It's something that's very natural. Your employees are really your best advocates because it's something that they want to do anyhow. What we have as a platform is the ability to inform folks about the latest and greatest technology, upcoming news, whatever is going to be most pertinent at the right time through a platform. They can quickly engage with it, they can read the content, they can learn more about it, they can create a quick link, and then amplify that by one click, pushing it out to all the different social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Weibo, whatever it is that you use, and continue to push that message out there, having a hashtag campaign, having a strategy, understanding how far that message is now proliferated, and ultimately, what is every marketer's dream, the ability to measure this. And so we talk about employees who are going out and tweeting on your behalf, the ones that are sending information on LinkedIn, that are blogging, they're doing all these great things on social media on behalf of the company to help advocate for it. But at the end of the day, how do you measure this? That's where having a platform and technology really allows you to not only amplify very quickly and dramatically across your entire employee base, but then at the end of the day, you can understand who shared it, where they shared it, what the clicks were, how many people were able to view this, what the reactions were, and capturing all that to understand really what content is working well and what really personifies something that your employees really engage with, and then the larger social media world will engage with. As Charlene Lee, one of our great partners at Alternative says, the research firm is really seeing this next level of employee engagement with advocacy. They're sharing to support product service, but it's a very personal thing because they're making it really authentic and saying, this is something that matters to me and is important to me, and I want to share that with my personal friends, family, network, colleagues out into the rest of the world. Employee advocacy is, again, not a new concept, but understanding why you want to utilize it in a very structured way to make it matter to your organization. First and foremost, people trust people. And I think we see this across the board when we consume media and we talk to the different brands and companies. We are consumers ourselves. And so when we're looking at buying a new product, the thing that we trust is not necessarily the company that's selling the product, but other people who use the product, people who work at the company, who we trust, who are going to advocate on behalf of the product. And that's when we get to a point where, again, you're probably not going to follow the company brand. Maybe you'll follow your friend that works at the company. Maybe you'll follow an executive at the company because they are a person to you, and what they say has a huge impact on how you think about a company and its referrals. Then going back to reach, I have, roughly about 1,000 or so folks that I've connected with on LinkedIn across the years of my career. I've got roughly, 800 or so Facebook friends. I've got a couple hundred Twitter followers. Every time I share something, I broaden my network, and I get not only more followers for myself, but I also reaching the impressions of all these people. So if you take that, me as being a single example, and I think on average our research has shown about each person has roughly 800 to 1,000 followers across these various social networks. You multiply that by 100 employees, you multiply that by 10,000 employees. If each of those folks shared that same message, think of what a great new marketing channel is for you to get that word out specifically about what's most important to you and your company and advocate in a very positive way. One of the things we talk about in regulated industries, we work with insurance, we work with healthcare, as well as banks and telcos, is employers are doing it already. Whether you want them to or not, they are already spending the time spreading the word about what they're doing in the day-to-day activity at work. Work life is so mixed these days. It's hard to separate what you're talking about on Twitter if it's personal versus professional. So again, some of these things are happening already. Some of them you're pushing, some of the employees are excited to do on their own. But having the ability to have a tool to be able to push out a consistent message also gives you this level of compliance. So you know what they're saying, and it gives the employee a safety net so they know what they can and can't say. And so if it's put out there for them, they're much more likely to share something where, like, this has been approved by the company, this makes sense, I'm very behind this, I want the company to succeed, I'm going to go ahead and share it. And it's an easy path for both sides of the coin. And then when it comes to engagement, we've done a number of studies as well when it goes to a side-by-side. If I share something from a corporate brand, hey, let's come to this event, it's coming up, versus I share it through my sales team. My sales team has a much closer, deeper, connected relationship with my prospects, and they feel that personal connection, and so that engagement will happen. We're like, oh, it's a great event, tell me more about it, Anne, what's going on, when should I attend, are you going to be there? And that level of social engagement above and beyond that initial share is very impactful. Then you move into HR savings. One of the best use cases for employee advocacy is absolutely recruiting. We spend so much time and money and effort bringing in new people that are great, but of course the best people are always friends of friends, word of mouth referrals. Let's take that, put it onto a platform, and push it out to the rest of the world, and then we can actually very quickly get to the best friends of friends of friends to help grow our networks. And then ultimately, what we're looking is to, of course, we're all trying to build our businesses, drive sales, grow productivity with our sales teams. Social selling is becoming a huge aspect of a salesperson's life. And when we look at the research, 78% of salespeople using social media are actually outperforming their peers because they're not only having this email and phone conversation that one is difficult to track, you can't really see all the different pieces that move along with it. They're having conversations on Twitter, they're reaching out to prospects that are talking about their products, they're engaging with people on LinkedIn, they're pulling these networks and really kind of hitting people from all different angles and interacting with their consumers in a way that is very natural on social media. So all in, if you look at how it benefits individual employees, how it benefits the company, how it drives sales, all the way down to recruiting, there's benefits across the board for employee advocacy within your company. So just to dive into a couple of examples, O2 is a part of Telefonica. It's based in the UK. They've got 10,000 plus employees and 23 million customers. If you're not familiar, they're actually a leading European digital communications company, similar to an AT&T or Verizon provider here in the US. Their initial goals were to move from being a social brand running external campaigns in terms of, I have a marketing campaign, let's try to figure out how to work with this, to truly becoming a overreaching, truly social business. And so you talk about something that's not just a one-time effort, but an ongoing effort across the board for the entire company. The goals, again, from a tactical basis, was to keep employees more informed on news and products, and then they do the very simple things of creating and sharing approved content. This is both content that is original, that they've created internally with agencies, and also third-party content about news and industry and what's going on when it comes to digital communications, and then growing the digital footprint. So a large part of it was, we have these assets. How do we get them distributed to the rest of the world? We know that people have our website, people are following us on Facebook, but we're not getting enough people either coming to those places. We need to go out and reach those consumers and those individuals and get the word out on behalf of the brand. So one of the really interesting things they did is they started with a very small pilot group. It was based on socially savvy members who raised their hands. And they said, all right, we have this new program. There are a number of people, we're interested in understanding how this works for our brand and for our company. So roughly about 100 people raised their hand and said, I really want to do this. I'm excited. I'm a social savvy user. I'm already on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm already doing some of these things. I want to help O2 and be a brand ambassador. That proved some great results very quickly, and they managed to scale their program to roughly about 15% of their company. So of the 10,000 employees, 15% of those are currently on this platform for employee advocacy, Dynamic Signal, and they continue to look to scale. So in 2016, their goal is to get to roughly about 30% of all employees. For this, we've actually updated. We've gotten to about 1.5 million impressions created every single month, and they've said that this equivalently, if they were to spend this in terms of earned media value, is roughly about £90,000 in value for them.
That's great. And so just a question here about how you were able to scale this program. What are some of the things, some of the actual tactics, some of the things that you did to help broaden and launch the program to get it to scale?
Absolutely, it's a great question, especially if you look at an organization of this size. You start off with a small group of 100. How do you get from that to 3,000, 5,000? How do you eventually get to the 10,000? It really starts in the planning phases early on. We talk about what the content strategy is, making sure we have a regular drumbeat of content that goes out to the employees, making sure that those employees are set up in a way where they're motivated. We have incentive programs in place. And one of the really fun things that O2 in particular did was they made it a fully immersive experience. So they had internal advocates wearing program-branded t-shirts, handing out cupcakes, and actually walking around at these kind of internal events, helping people download the mobile app. It was a great push to get the first 1,000 people on very, very quickly. Then, as you can imagine, word of mouth happens. Friends are telling their friends about it. There's a point system in the leaderboard. People get excited about the metrics in terms of, what they can do. There's prizes in place for the people who get the most points, who are most actively sharing on the platform. And then you go back again the next quarter with another fully immersive experience, having those cupcakes, having people who are already advocates go out there and continue to advocate, and then it just adds upon itself. And so at that point in time, we're getting to, roughly 30% of the entire company by 2016 next year. So some really great ideas that they had there. We also have some folks who, Input is another example, where they had a branded leather jacket that you could win if you were interested in participating in the program. So one was signing up. The second was who had the highest number of points, and they had a limited number of jackets to hand out. Another example is with Lenovo. They had a hangout with the CEO for a day. So sign up for the program. The CEO had this executive sponsorship, went out there and said, everybody, I want you to do this. This is a great part of being a fantastic Lenovo employee. And the person who had the most points at the end of the quarter because of their shares and reactions and what they were doing on social media through the employee advocacy platform got to spend a day with the CEO playing golf and then really having a heart-to-heart conversation about what it was like working at Lenovo. So some really great experiences in terms of, one, getting the planning up and going and scaling, having those events, driving and motivating people, and of course the incentive structure on the back end to make sure that people are rewarded and recognized for the work and effort they're putting into it.
That's great. So there's a section of incentive and reward, and you know, just creating something that people want to attain to add to this whole program. That's awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely. And kind of shifting gears a little bit between a consumer-focused brand, moving into Humana, we talk about the regulated industry and, of course, compliance and control being a huge issue here. So Humana is a healthcare company based in the U.S., and their biggest goal for the program was to increase engagement and shares, really kind of create this advocacy team that they wanted to go out and promote the brand. They had enthusiastic advocates, and one of the core tenets of the brand is the dream of helping their members achieve lifelong well-being. And as you can imagine, it is very much the overall fitness, healthcare goals, getting regular checkups, preventative healthcare, nutrition, all those things wrap up into what Humana stands for, and propagating that through very, very authentic and passionate advocates. So some of the benefits on the company side was they were looking to increase organic channel engagement growth, really have that positive brand sentiment. People don't always think of the healthcare provider, the insurance provider, and think, oh, I love these guys, they're looking out for me. Sometimes it's a negative reaction, and they really want to move that sentiment towards a positive relationship and have that concern for well-being as the overall sentiment when you think of Humana as a brand. So initially, they established an advocacy team and to be able to target social influencers, and really looked at those folks similarly to O2 as this core group of pilot folks that they started off with. And so that quickly grew from a handful of 100 or so to the 532 they're at today. Humana has only been a customer and on the Dynamics platform for roughly about a quarter, but they've shown some great results. They've gotten some good attention. They've got tons of shares. The active employees they have are tremendously active in terms of the reactions and clicks, as you can see. And we've gotten 15 million plus impressions within that very short amount of time. Some of the positive aspects are it's really created this greater sense of community amongst the associates. We've gotten some survey results as well, where unsolicited member feedback has been around how satisfied they are with how friends and followers are engaging in that content. And of course, it's a positively reinforced cycle of, if I share something and I get positive reactions from people who follow me, I will want to then share more. And so that goes into the quality of content, the ease of use, and then that positive reinforcement of that cycle. They also use the points and leaderboards, and they're continuing to participate. So 3 months after launch, some of these great anecdotes are, the fact that 10% of all social chatter about Humana is through this program. It's a huge win. And as you can imagine, these are hard statistics to come by. When you only have a small number of employees doing this, again, how do we take this and scale this? And so if it's 10% today with those 500 employees, imagine what it could look like if half their employee base was on an employee advocacy program. So by mid-November or so, we're looking at the program, and most up-to-date stats here, the program generating on average about 6% of all brand mentions on social media, and they are looking at an earned media value of about $475,000 for 2016. So again, relatively small investment for a huge return, not only from a sentiment standpoint, but also in terms of real ROI. One of the things that they looked at was the fact that FDA regulations are very difficult to work with. So it really prohibits selling of products via social media, and so at no point in time are they really saying, here's Humana, here's a special deal. It's not driven in a way where it's that direct sell, but again, building that overall ecosystem of well-being, health, fitness, has been really, really positive for them, and has increased their social presence and positive sentiment across the board.
That's great. And so just another question here. So in such a heavily regulated industry, what or why is employee advocacy working in such a heavily regulated industry? I guess my question, it's such a tough place to play, but it's something that we see all the time as marketers, that doesn't mean that you can't have an effect. And I guess my question is, why did it work?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really good question, because this industry, compounded with things like finance, banking, they have additional constraints around them that maybe the rest of the world doesn't. And understanding why, even for them, in this difficult structure of regulation and compliance, can be very, very successful. So one of the things that when we were talking to Humana, they had a very unique challenge, and they saw that as, we have to understand compliance regulations, while we also need to amplify our brand and build trust with our consumers, all at the same time staying within FTC regulations. And so what they said was, we're going to activate employees, but this, we understand, creates a level of risk for our industry. There's a lot of scrutiny. Anytime that something happens, we have the ability to do something that is a hashtag and says, as full disclosure, this is a Humana employee. And so if you use the hashtag, it gets amended to whatever post you have automatically. So anything that is shared on social media through this employee advocacy program, through Humana, is tagged and shown full disclosure, it's through an employee. But at the end of the day, it's also the content itself that you need to consider. So it's a combination of making sure you have the compliance and disclosure, but then what is it that you're actually going to be sharing and promoting? And that's where the content strategy itself came into play. The content needed to be focused on health and well-being, and did not at any point in time drive to buy, link to, or use their products and services. And that's a really fine line to walk, where you want to make sure that you're talking about things, research, third-party research, things that you look upon, recommendations for healthcare, recommendations for doctors, but at no point in time tying it back to any sort of click here to buy, or any specific services, product lines, products that Humana was proposing. And even then, they found that it was very valuable to continue to have that brand awareness without pushing the direct sell. And so to meet all those industry requirements, they needed to introduce also the third leg here, required training. This is something that is obviously taken very seriously. Anybody who is interested in participating in the program signs up, signs a disclosure, sits through not only the training of how to use the program, but also what is and what is not allowed under FTC regulation, and that training happens on a regular basis as these regulations change. So it's a huge investment on their side, not only of the time and energy to create the content, curate the content, but also make sure that they're training their employees and complying. And so across the board, a huge amount of dedication and resources to make this successful. But of course, on the flip side, within a short amount of time, 10% plus of all their social media is then pushed through the program. So I think they're seeing some great rewards. But of course, because of the industry they're in, they did have to dedicate some of that training and resources up front to make it happen.
That's great. So I mean, it's like any form of marketing. It takes a great plan, and once you build a great plan, then executing on it is much easier, and the results will come. So that's great.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is about spending the time up front, making those plans, and executing upon them well, for sure. And our last case example here, I want to take a little bit of a different slant into fundraising and the university system. Fundraising happens across the board, whether it's for nonprofits, for universities and education, for specific causes, even for foundations. I think that this is a common use case for folks who are looking to really excite and amplify some of their messages around specific giving campaigns. So Cal is a local university. We're based here in San Francisco, and they're right across the bay over in Berkeley. They have been using our employee advocacy program for about 2 years now. So this is the Cal alumni and student group. So it's open actually to all alumni as well as parents. And what they did is really a mix of all university content. So it's really not just pushing the campaign itself, but it's updates, it's information, it's tying people back to campus and really having that level of nostalgia around sports, tech, health, campus and alumni news, focused on Cal research, or anything that has any sort of influence or participation with Cal alumni or Cal associates. And so it's that broader mix of, how do I continue to communicate and keep these folks who are my target audience for fundraising campaigns in the future with great information, great news, and really kind of continue to share information with them and allow them to share information about all the great things that are happening at Cal. One of the really fun things that they did was the Cal Big Give. You see this here on the screen today, was a 24-hour donation drive. And so you think about these kind of spikes of when people are giving. I know it's Giving Tuesday today, which is another great opportunity to give to your favorite charity. But Cal Big Give was the first 24-hour drive that they had, and again, it's right on that, actually today, Giving Tuesday, and it was driving audiences towards a specific donation with a specific amount of time. And so within that one 24-hour drive, we actually had the administrator of the program share 10 different things throughout the day and continue to go back to this one landing page. And so if you think about this interaction, what happens on a mobile app, you have it in your hand, it's with you all the time. You can actually, as the administrator, send a push notification with information to content talking about the latest medical research program, what's going on with the sports initiative throughout the day, peppering this, and then saying, here's the link, send it directly back to the one page, which is collecting donations, and then really get a high engagement in a very short amount of time. And so it was planned out ahead of time. All the content was pre-organized. The timing was sent out throughout the day and peppering it in. And so within that 24-hour fundraiser, they managed to raise $5.3 million. So, not a high amount of effort, really critical in having a well-executed plan, as we talked about before. And then in a short amount of time, had a really big bump in terms of what they were able to gain from their alumni and parents in terms of raising money for a really good cause. They used the hashtag, which was hashtag CalBigGive. They were able to track, not only through the shares, but also through the hashtag, the number of users, reactions, impressions, the shares. They also did things in terms of soliciting content from members and said, hashtag CalBig, and had other people participate. And so it's really a two-way stream of not only are we pushing information and content to you, not only are we asking you to go to this page and contribute and share, but also, give us information, give us content, tell us what you're doing, and then we'll then go back and broadcast that. And so again, that great loop of sharing to members, have members sharing back to you, and then propagating that again with great new stories and great new activity. So the branding for the site itself was changed to reflect that one-day campaign, and this is actually the second time that they've done it. So it continues to be a great part of their overall strategy in terms of how to interact and then have those big campaign pushes when the time is right.
Oh, yeah.
Just another question here, and sorry, I'm jumping in and asking questions on each one of these, but can you give a couple other examples of fundraising campaigns or campaigns that were specifically targeted to use, specifically used to target fundraising?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's a regular drumbeat of information. So you're always creating great content. You're always sharing information. You really want to keep that great touch point of conversation going between you and that community that you're servicing. But around specific fundraising opportunities, it really comes around what the calendar looks like. And so for them, graduation was a great time. It's also a great time to recruit new members. So if you're graduating, you're moving from an active student to an alumni, you probably have a really great sense of what Cal is and who they are. And it's a great time to, one, bring them into the program, and also for them to maybe contribute during that graduation. Same thing with the parents during graduation. They're probably the most proud they've ever been, and then want to continue to move forward with that progress. Another time is homecoming, so thinking about all the alumni that are coming back to the university, and the nostalgia that brings about. As they're on campus, as they're at the football game, as they're thinking about what their time at Cal is like, it's another great push. Donation drives like Cal Big Give, of course. Big Game is another one where alumni and parents who may not be as invested in the school on a day-to-day basis are very active. So any other sort of sporting events, basketball, think of those kind of big events that are drawing folks from off campus back on, and when eyes are on the program and the university itself again. All great examples of different campaigns that can be used for fundraising events.
Great. Well, thank you, Ann. That was awesome. And now we're going to pass it to Andrew, and he's going to talk about how we at Raidious have used employee advocacy to amplify our marketing message.
Sure. So just like Ann had said earlier in the presentation, at Raidious, leading up until 2015, what we've found is that just like a lot of the other clients that we've seen here and what you've probably experienced on your own time is that what we've done has been particularly a manual process leading up until 2015 and adopting the VoiceStorm platform from Dynamic Signal. So we would have our marketing team send around a text, send around an email saying, hey, we've got this really nice piece of content. Could you please push this out on your channels? And that historically has been a very good way of getting people active, especially as we release a white paper or a really nice video for one of our clients or for our own marketing purposes. We've got a small team that gets really excited about sharing that and pushing that out on their channels. But just like Ann had said, what we've noticed is that we now have metrics and an understanding of exactly what that impact is and how many people we're reaching through that activity. And now there's a platform wrapped around it. So since adopting the Dynamic Signal platform, we have generated, with a relatively smaller team, obviously, than some of the examples that we walked through earlier. There are only about 13 of us, which is about half of our functional full-time team that's active on the platform. But we've generated over 1,000 shares and over 1 million impressions through the current program, getting a lot more eyeballs on our content than we would have had otherwise. And again, just an understanding of what that impact really was. Still, while having the platform itself, the real necessity behind it is that we still have to encourage employees to share. And the good thing about having a system to do so is that we have multiple ways to communicate with our team and say, hey, it still can send out an email if people are more likely to engage that way. People can log in proactively. We've got a screenshot here of some of the things that are in our platform that has just a broad selection, a smattering of different things that we publish. Again, whether it's a blog or a video that we've produced, a client piece. There's a sample here from one of our agency partners that highlights a piece, a series of pieces actually that was done for one of our clients throughout the course of 2014 and 2015. And if it's just industry news, again, really what we're going for here is giving our own employees a way to share the kind of news that they would otherwise be looking for anyway. So it gives them a way to quantify their contribution as well. One of the things that we've learned is that the adoption of gamification and a very unique and fresh perspective on incentives has been absolutely crucial for us, and it's something that we continue to play with and change over time. Moving simply from like a gift reward, we've incorporated it into some of our employee retreats and making that part of different competitions that have sort of lived outside of the platform and the digital space. So we've really taken what is sort of a very nebulous thing and tried to make it much more concrete. One of the things that we're toying with right now is making it much more integrated into the day-to-day experiences at Raidious. So, for example, when we have a reward that's given to an employee or a group of employees that's been particularly active, we're trying to make sure that that reward sort of revitalizes and gives them more opportunities to re-engage. For example, taking a client out to lunch on Raidious, or taking your next creative meeting out to coffee on Raidious, and just dialing up the level of experience that an employee has and keeps them really engaged in a very positive way. And again, it's a very low-cost kind of way to implement something like that, but the dividends, we believe, are very large. A couple of things just to think about, and I think I've covered on this a little bit. The program doesn't run itself, and the incentives that we've put together really help us out a lot in driving things forward. So with that, I think I'll hand things over to Anne again. Anne, what do you think? How are we doing?
Absolutely. I think that you guys are doing fantastic. It's great to see that even with a smaller employee count of 13 employees, you have such dramatic results. And I love that you're keeping the incentives fresh. You know, little things do make a difference, where some folks get very excited about the points themselves and just that competitive spirit and nature of competing against your fellow coworkers. Others like the little bit of rewards. I like tying it back to the business as well, of having the lunches and the coffees, and kind of doing that on Raidious. So again, you don't have to have the big, bold one-off big prize awards. Those work great, but all the small things that trickle out throughout the day to keep that momentum going are very important. So great job there, guys. Kudos to you.
Awesome.
Looking at some of the best practices, one of the things that I feel like we've touched upon with all of our customer examples, as well as with what Ryan is doing at Raidious, is really inspiring your employees to do this. Oftentimes folks I talk to, they get very excited. They're on the marketing team, they're the CMO, the heads of content, and they're like, I think this is great, but how do I get people to actually do it? What's in it for me? And I think this is a very common question of, why would your most valuable assets, your employees, be excited to continue to share that brand? And what's surprising is how excited employees are to get going anyhow when it talks about this internal voice, where you have a large corporation, but a small corporation, but how much you can empower each individual to give them a voice to share what that corporate brand is. And they become the spokesperson. Each of these employees becomes a spokesperson on behalf of the company, and giving them that authority and that power, and to say, yes, we believe in you, we trust you, we think that your voice and your opinion matters. Help us build our business together. And I think that level of trust and partnership with your employees goes a long, long way. And of course, then it goes into the tangible benefits of what's in it for them. One of the things that we have seen happen very, very often is the fact that if you become more active socially, you build your personal brand. And this translates into more people following you, more people interacting with you. I've grown my accounts by 20% across the board just because now I'm interacting with a different level of folks, or different group of folks that are the leaders in content marketing, in digital marketing, in employee advocacy. People will notice you if you continue to share great content about things that are interesting to them. And so I've had great conversations. I've met folks virtually. I've met folks at conferences and events. And this is something that individuals will take with them as they move from job to job. It is obviously a great value and benefit for you, the corporation, today, but this is a value that the employee individually can take with them as they move forward in their career. And so they continue to be industry experts, content experts, and have this great following across social media, building up who they are in that social sphere. Another way that's really quick and easy to do this is incorporate with existing programs. This is something that should be threaded throughout all of your marketing campaigns. So think of it as not as, this is my employee advocacy program, what am I doing over here? Think of your overall marketing strategy, your overall marketing campaigns, and weave employee advocacy into every single campaign that you do, because it is not just a one-off, it is an integral part of your overall strategy. And so when we think of it at Dynamic Signal, we have product launches, we have webinars, we have email campaigns, we do all the great content marketing that is the trend today, that really speaks to how do you engage with your target core audience. We also incorporate employee advocacy into each of those different aspects. Everything we build, every time we build something, every time we go to an event, employee advocacy is along stride with that to make sure that it's easy, it becomes a replicable use case for all of our employees. It just becomes part of your job. And another great way to do that is also through onboarding programs. So as soon as you sign up a new customer, actually every time you have a new employee, as they come on and they're trained and they're welcomed, make sure that they know There's a platform that we use. Download it now. Have it on your laptop. Have it on your mobile. Start using it today. Share your first tweet. Tell people how excited you are to be working at this company. Tell all of your previous colleagues, all of your previous customers that you're excited to be in this space now, and if they're interested in learning more, they can talk to you. There's simple things we can do. Then it becomes an everyday part of life. It's existing as part of the company and corporate culture. And of course, this is particularly important, that it's 100% opt-in, that this is something that they should do if they choose to do it, that it's a value to the company and we're very appreciative. It's a value to them because it helps grow the personal brand, but it's not by any means mandatory. That it's always something that is there for them if they want to. And what you'll find is people will be very in tune with what makes sense for them. You can share a bunch of things. You can share certain things that really just apply to you. When I have things that I'm participating in, like a webinar, I get very excited and I share to all of my various personal channels. If there are things that are maybe not within quite my realm, maybe I'll read it and I'll understand it and I'll be in the know when it comes to the company, but I don't necessarily have to share everything. And then that kind of picking and choosing, as well as creating a very personalized text to go along with that content, I'll be like, that is something that allows me to have personal choice in what I share, when I share it, and exactly how I share it. And then we talk about launching and scaling. Again, that training program, critically important for those that are in heavily regulated industries, also important for folks who really just want to make sure that people know what they're doing, how they do it, how to use the tool. It's intuitive, it's simple, it's easy, but at the same time, we even run things like Social Media 101. What is Twitter? How do you share there? Where would I share something on LinkedIn versus Facebook? How do I start adding members? How do I interact with folks once they're engaging with me? Those are very simple things that make a huge amount of difference. And you go all the way from millennials who are very comfortable, all the way to kind of maybe older generations that you have, and get them to be more comfortable more easily to make it a more fluid part of their everyday job. Authenticity and personalization, I talked about a little bit before, goes into feel free to change the subtext. Feel free to add your own color and commentary on what this is. Tell people why you're excited about this. Tell people why you're sharing this and why it could matter to them. Ask them to engage you in conversation. There's nothing more fulfilling than, when I share something and I have a colleague that I very much respect, that I worked with maybe 2 jobs ago, comes back and is like, that's awesome, man, tell me more about it. Maybe we'll grab lunch and we'll talk about it. This leads into authentic conversations because you put that first foot out there and you have that voice that is authentic to you. Again, making it easy. And this is where the difference goes between having the spreadsheets, having the emails, asking people to do it, and then trying to follow up, versus having a tool that is the mobile app. You have a one-click share. It's on your email. You have the web browser, making it super, super dead simple for people to read, consume, have that one click. And then ultimately, I think we all know this, we all do things because they feel good, but also because we get a little something in return. And that can be as simple as, a Starbucks reward card, all the way through to a day with the CEO. Any of these incentives work. You just have to know who your audience is and what will work for your employees.
Awesome. So just to wrap this up, a few key takeaways. Hopefully you learned a lot from this webinar. Hopefully this information kind of uncovered some things when it comes to EA that you maybe didn't know before. And seeing some success stories obviously is huge when making a decision like implementing something like this. So, so a few key takeaways. Allow your workforce to be brand advocates by rethinking communications both internally and externally. Help employees be informed and engaged with digital age communications that they already use in their personal lives. Just because they use these tools doesn't mean they are using them correctly, as I think we've all seen at one time or another. So getting in and helping them is going to be really important. Focus on social and mobile as they are critical in the execution of a successful EA campaign. That's just really important. It's much easier to execute on those platforms, and it really makes this an easy program to implement. And obviously, we've shown today it can have huge, huge benefits. And I mean, Ann mentioned this a couple times. There's nothing more important to just about any business than the people that are working within it, and being able to turn those people into huge advocates and mobilizing them as a just kind of a force when it comes to communicating your company's message. I mean, why not is kind of the question in my mind. So I think we're ready to move into Q&A now. I think we have a little bit of time left.
Excellent. And if you haven't asked a question just yet, we have had a couple of that have come through, but if you are looking at the GoToWebinar control panel, you can ask your questions there, and we'll be monitoring that as well. But I'll field a couple of these and dish them out to you, Ryan and Ann. The first one that's come through says, what are some of the best incentive programs that you've seen? Ann, do you want to tackle that one?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question. We have seen a great variety, as you can imagine. Some of the most exciting ones have been very much experiential. So Novartis is a great example. They are a European-based pharmaceutical and biotech, and they have an annual conference in Brussels. And so they've got global employees, and they've rolled this program out to a couple hundred to start with. But the big incentive for them was, we will send you to Brussels to attend this conference for a week, being the top share. And as you can imagine, that's a great prize to win, because not only do you get to meet a lot of your colleagues in person, but it's a fun little trip to go along with that as well. Another one would be Intuit that I mentioned. They have done a number of things, and similarly to what Raidious is doing in terms of the smaller rewards. So you have your gift cards, you have kind of the local incentives. They've also done this thing where they'll have teams work and kind of compete against each other. And so, as you can imagine, it would be the sales team versus a marketing team. They've got a big launch that's coming up, and whichever team comes together and wins, they win some sort of a party or an event surprise where they can go out and have a team outing together. So you think about individual rewards, you think about larger trip-oriented rewards, all the way through to team-based incentives as well. So having that kind of competitive spirit, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's for a longer term, whether it's 3 months to 6 months, or if it's just for the launch campaign, each of those are great times to think about how to motivate and reward folks. And I think if you are in the launch process, it's a great time to have a reward for that initial set, but continue to think about, what is the next reward we're thinking of? Is it a overall point system? Can I get new people in and get them excited? Is there a lottery of some sort? Those are all great incentives, and at every stage, I would say, as you graduate in the growth and scale of your program, continue thinking about, how do you make these rewards interesting for the folks that continue to actively participate.
Awesome. So in short, keep it interesting, keep it fresh, sky's the limit.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the creativity is the limit. That's as far as you can go.
Excellent. Another question that's come in, let's see here. How do you use this tool to help drive sales and or donations directly? Ryan, you want to give that a shot?
Yeah, so when it comes to driving sales or donations directly from a tool like this, it comes down to creating the messaging first. I'm a big advocate for always starting with a plan, never just winging it when it comes to anything, when it comes to marketing. And if you can sit down and you can actually come up with a plan and create the messaging and make this very easy for your employees and deliver them a message that's, first of all, interesting, that they actually want to share. I think that's pretty key in all of this. If you set up this whole big program and you don't put in great content, then what's the point? No one's going to want to, just because you set up the best incentives and you do all of this stuff, but then you just put in worthless content that nobody wants to share. Nobody's going to do anything with it, so you're not going to get anything, let alone a sale out of this content. So from my perspective, it starts with planning. It starts with creating great content and then getting it into the system for the team to share. That great content obviously is going to need to be engaging, and if you're trying to specifically draw it back to a sale or to a donation, then you need to put those call to actions in place and have those ready for the teams that you're gonna ask to share this to share. That way you're not asking you're not creating content that's going out there that maybe is interesting, but isn't going to really lead to that call to action that you really need in order to close that sale or to close that donation. So to me, it's great content and getting that great content into the tool to be sent out by the team.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that, Ryan. And I'd like to add just a little bit more around the tracking and reporting portion of it. We do quite a bit with Google Analytics, Insight Catalyst. We do UTM tracking that allows you to understand where your content is being shared, eventually who's clicking on it, and then, of course, bring it all back to having them sign up and become a lead, and eventually really hitting the ROI in dollars. So it is a full-scale, have great content, get people to get excited about it, but then also tracking on the back end to make sure that those very valuable leads and interested parties come back around and become customers at the end of the day.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Tracking is a subject that is very near and dear to our hearts. Let's see. One other question that's come in. How do you regulate what is and is not shared? Can you speak to governance and permission levels? Sorry. Anne, do you want to give that a shot?
Happy to, yeah. Permissioning is the ability to have different layers of managers, one, access the content, and then two, share the content. So at Dynamic Signal, we have a feature called divisions and permissions. This allows you to actually subdivide the content, and you as a global administrator can actually go in and tell which different divisions will get which type of content, and then there's managers that sit at the next level below. They have access only to the content and the members that are within that division, and then they have the authority to share and view specific content that is pertinent to them. And so from a technology standpoint, you have this built-in ability to have a hierarchy of content, members, and sharing visibility. Then also on the kind of tracking standpoint, we talked a little bit about this, the ability to append text that is not removable by the company, and when it's shared, that's the full disclosure of, hashtag we use Dynamic Signal Employee as part of whatever we share out into the world. And so you definitely have control and compliance within your organization around what you're trying to do with divisions and permissions. You also have that compliance standpoint externally with the amended appended text there.
Very cool. So in a nutshell, there's an answer for that. We can do that. Let's see. I think we've got time just for one or two more questions. Let me see here. Here's a good one. Does all the content need to be original and owned by my company? Ryan, I'm going to seesaw this again. I'm going to dish that one to you.
Well, I mean, I guess that you could do some curated content, and so I guess the first question, I mean, maybe Anne has a better answer to this, but I would say I guess no, it doesn't have to be owned by the company, but I would recommend it. If you're going to be, it goes back to my last answer. If you're going to be sharing all of this content, you should focus on content that's created for this purpose, and that content should be owned. It should be something that your company owns and is leading back to a purpose. Whether you're trying to actually close something, so if you're actually trying to lead to a sale, you want that content to be tailored and to be customized. If you're just trying to be put out great content that to show off the culture of the company, again, that's something that you're going to need to create, unless maybe it's something that you found in the news. But I'll let Anne go into a little bit more of that aspect.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Ryan. I would say I would agree with you. The majority of content that you're pushing should probably be pertinent to the company. We've found some great success with companies that also use curated content as well. And so I would probably use something like the 80-20 rule here to talk about, have a great content strategy, invest in that, invest in the resources, and making sure you've got authentic, original, fantastic content that's very engaging, but also understanding where you lie within kind of your ecosystem and what's trending, and making sure that you seem, or you're really portraying the fact that you are following these trends, that you are leading these trends. And what's interesting is we'll put content into separate categories. So things like philanthropy, product, events, etc. And then we track which content works the best. And so for some of our customers, things that are philanthropic, that are external to the company, but tie back to something the company is doing, tend to work best. You know, to Ryan's point, not everybody wants to push sales messages all the time. If they're peppered in there, they come off as more authentic. If you're pushing the exact same sales message every single time you share something, you're going to eventually turn to deaf ears. So what you want to do is actually mix up that content with stuff that is product and company specific with some other things that allows people to pick and choose. And then you can actually, because of our reporting and tracking, figure out what is working best, what's getting shared most often, what's getting most engaged out there, and then you can readjust your content strategy from there.
Very cool. So we are just wrapping up toward the end of the hour, so I'm going to take this opportunity to wrap us up. Ryan, would you like to sign us off and say our goodbyes?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to sit down and learn about employee advocacy. I think this is, you know, like Ann said early on, this isn't something that's new, but the capabilities and the technology is new, and it's having an effect on a lot of brands when it comes to creating an entirely new amplification tactic by deploying an EA strategy, and that's really you know, a compelling thing. And where in a world of social media marketing where things are changing constantly, employee advocacy has been around for a long time, even well before social media. But social media has given us a chance to harness it for real results, whether it's just growing awareness or actually growing your sales and growing your donations. You know, it's something with a ton of power, and we've said it a few times, there's nothing more important in any organization than the people and the employees that are working in it. So using them to amplify your message is definitely, you know, it's a wave of the future with the new technology that's available. So again, thank you everybody for attending. You know, this was great and informative, and I hope everybody enjoyed, and hope to see you again soon.